Princess Luna had not been joking about the headache. Shy and Curl had gone through an entire barrel of water, painkillers, bags of frozen peas, and a massage from Angel, and they were still wishing Luna had just stabbed her horn through Fluttershy and hadn't been done with it. Fluttercurl had run through their admittedly small list of curse words an hour ago, and Shy was just agonized enough to consider joining her. Naturally, there came a knock at the door that resulted in a very loud groan from Fluttercurl. Angel made to shoo them away, but Shy didn't want to be rude, especially after everything. She abandoned Fluttercurl on the couch in her precious ice pack and opened the door with the most welcoming smile she could plaster over the throb of her skull. Her smile immediately slid off her face in shock. "Charlie? I just came by to see how you were doing, Princess," Charlie said, looking genuinely worried. Fluttershy didn't bother with the additional headache of protesting the title. "Oh, I'm fine, thank you. I just have a little headache. It's nothing to worry about, really." "Oh, is there anything I can do to help?" "You could leave," shouted a very irritated Fluttercurl. Cheerily startled, Fluttershy winced. I have a daughter now. Surprise?" Cheerily shook her head. "With everything else that happened, I'm not even gonna ask. Do I need to bring over the school registration papers?" No, she's, taking an apprenticeship with me, I think. But speaking of school, shouldn't you be there right now?" "Oh, didn't you hear? Princess Celestia declared the next few days are to be holidays in your honor." Fluttershy froze. Hadn't the Paris had enough surprises for one adventure by now? What? Why?" Cheerily gave Fluttershy a confused, isn't it obvious look. "Princess, the gift you gave everyone yesterday was wonderful. I know your vision was clouded, and I'm sorry it was never meant to last, but it was still wonderful. Did you really think we wouldn't love you for it?" She kneeled before her, Princess. "Even if you no longer have the power of an alicorn, and I no longer carry a piece of your essence, you will always be Princess Gaia to me." Fluttershy staggered back a few steps, equal parts embarrassed by the praise and terrified by the idea of all Equestria's eyes on her. But I thought Twilight's memory spell snapped you out of that." Cheerily shook her head. "No, my princess. Twilight reminded me that I shouldn't have given up on my students, and in the moment I felt too betrayed to defend you any further. But you only had the children's best interests in mind. I couldn't possibly be angry at you for that. I hope you can forgive my moment of weakness." Fluttershy blinked. "Oh, it's okay, Cheerily. I just didn't think you still felt this way. And I'm glad my friends were able to help you before you hurt them too badly." Cheerily smiled back at her. "Thank you, my princess. I'm glad for that too. That's the one part of all this that I regret." Then her eyes widened, and she stood to her full height. "Oh, I almost forgot! Ditzy-Doo is receiving the title Most Protective Mother from Princess Luna herself. She's getting a ceremony and canterlot and everything." Fluttershy remembered Ditzy. She'd resisted Princess Gaia's offer to become one of her knights till the very end, refusing to stop protecting her child even for a moment. She wondered if Ditzy wouldn't have been able to make her perfect world in Fluttershy's place. "Thank you for telling me. I'm glad to hear it. I can't think of any pony more deserving." "You're welcome, my princess. Please don't call me your princess. As you wish, your kindnesty." Now Fluttershy knew how Celestia felt. "Oh, there is one more thing. Here is your formal invitation, your kindnesty." Shirley took out a folded note from wherever it was ponies stored their bits and hoofed it to Fluttershy, who accepted it with no small hesitation. She unfolded it and read it. "To Ladies Fluttershy and Fluttercruel, or Princess Gaia and her ward. You are cordially invited to a celebration in your honor, so that ponies may formally give thanks to the humble Pegasus who single-handedly healed ponies all across Equestria from the damage dealt by Discord in a single day of innocence. There shall be singing, dancing, games aplenty, and a magic show performed by the one and only Trixie herself. Those you have healed shall be overjoyed by your presence. Sincerely, the bringer of life and flame, Princess Celestia, and the Lady of Dreams in the Night, Princess Luna." Below was a set of times, dates, and locations spanning the next week. Shirley watched her princess happily. "Mare is dearly hoping you attend, your kindnesty." And so it was that Shirley's first encounter with Fluttercurl was in helping her drag her mother's fainted body back inside the cottage. I magically scanned Shirley's brain twice, and those of a few other ponies for good measure. There is zero trace of Nightmare Whisperers or anyone else's magic. The only difference I and the doctors at the hospital can detect is heightened endorphin levels across the board, bringing them just above the average from before Discord's curse, and way above what they were just a week ago. I used my failsafe spell for good measure, and still nothing. Also, these are from Princess Luna. Said Fluttershy, who still had her half raised to knock. She gingerly took the pair of bottles labeled headache cure from Twilight's magic. "How did you know what I was going to ask?" "Shirley showed up a few hours ago and asked me to examine her and some of your other subjects, because she saw how worried you were about them still being under mind control. They said they didn't want to see their princess looking sad." "Oh." Fluttershy took a hesitant sip from one of the bottles. It tasted vaguely lemony. "And you're sure your failsafe spell didn't fail?" "I don't see why it would. It may not have held up against Discord's magic, but it dispelled your fog easily enough." "But then, how did the memory spell work?" Failsafe spell is meant to wash away enchantments. The memory spell is more like a drain pipe pulling out the muck. Different use cases entirely. Anyway, you said everyone you changed has been acting this way? Well, most of them. They've all been smiling and waving at me. And what? And when I asked them nicely to leave me alone, they listened. Welcome to Happy Family, Trixie shouted from the depths of the library. She had received the princess's request for a performance at the state-sanctioned royalty-attended festival, froze for a full 5 minutes, and promptly broke into Twilight's meager alcohol stash to drown her panic in a bottle of vodka. Twilight groaned. Not now, Trixie, this is serious! Actually, Spike said, peeking out at the town's ponies pretending not to throw glances at their princess. I kinda think it's an improvement. How? Pegasus and Unicorn said in perfect harmony. Well, it's not like any pony in Ponyville didn't like Fluttershy before anyway. Just seems like they're being more open about it now. You'd think you might be generalizing things, Spike. Yeah, I know. But seriously, Twilight, have you looked outside? I mean, really looked at everyone? Kinda hard not to when they kept swarming Fluttershy until she asked them to leave. That's not what I mean. Look, I know reading ponies isn't exactly your strong suit, but every pony in Ponyville is just being really nice today. This is Ponyville. They're always nice. Yeah, but since Discord happened, they've been a lot jumpier and more snappish. But now they're all happier like Discord never happened. Are you sure that's really healthy? I mean, I guess I can't complain about being happier, but every pony's practically worshipping Fluttershy like she made the sun rise. You mean like how you worship Princess Celestia? Twilight flustered. That's different. I love her like a mother. And she realized, every pony loves you like a mother. Yep, and Mama just went through a very rough time. What would you do if Celestia or Grandma turned into a nightmare for a day and it took the elements to get them back to normal? I'd be making sure they were okay, hanging around them until I was sure they'd be alright. Just like every pony's doing with Fluttershy right now. And what better way to make sure than by throwing her a generous party? Trixie's third voice declared. A cloud of confetti was conjured and dumped over the pair with surprising accuracy. Spike stared at them blankly for a few seconds, then sighed and left to get a broom. Thank you very much for your donation to the festivities, Doctor, Mare said happily. Well, it turns out the Ice Cream Planet doesn't accept returns on their mining rights, said Dr. Hooves. Guess they don't want the Vanilla Islands to be tainted by the Chocolate Mountain Range or something or other. And I'd already filled dozens of my chips' cargo holds with the stuff by the time the transformation reversed. Might as well put it to a good cause. Mare managed a straight face through the Doctor's absurd ramblings, having long since learned not to question him. It was a topic of hot debate at Town Hall whether he or Pinkie Pie was cleverer, and who was crazier. Ever since Twilight Sparkle's arrival in Ponyville, it had become a common joke that the little town saw more of Princess Celestia than the rest of Equestria put together. For some, this was more fact than joke. Ravenclaw was out arranging last-minute purchases of party food, and Mare was busy proving her little office still had a place in the universe, even with the princess's envoy having taken up permanent residence in the town. The heroes hadn't had a chance to get together and talk with Fluttershy and Fluttercurl since the princesses brought them home last night. Trixie was spending every spare minute desperately trying to string together a magic act that didn't rely on obnoxious amounts of boasting, with Spike reluctantly assigned to make sure she didn't undo all the medical pony's hard work on her ribs or continue to raid Twilight's alcohol cabinet. Verity had been tasked with throwing together a new magician's outfit for Trixie, plus some simpler outfits for the guests of honor and her daughter, in the span of a mere few days, all while still resting her broken limbs. To say the mare was frazzled was an understatement. Pinkie Pie had been granted free reign of the town. All any pony could see of her was a pink blur darting everywhere she could reach. Rainbow was still helping the weather team look for Diamond Tiara when she wasn't helping to negotiate the weather schedule changes to accommodate the Southern Festival. She still managed to make time for Scootaloo, though. Applejack had hoofed off her catering duties to her brother and grandmother, and gave a 15-minute lecture to Applebloom about what would happen if she tried her unique sales tactics again. She, Rarity, and Rainbow Dash had agreed to keep very firm eyes on the Crusaders to stop them blowing up the festival in pursuit of their cutie marks. She knew she didn't really need to be there, but with all three of Fluttershy's closer friends caught up in their festival duties, AJ figured she could be there for her friend in their stead. Thus, Applejack met with Twilight, Fluttershy, Fluttercurl, and Princess Celestia herself in the generously offered mayor's office. Princess, why are you holding a festival for what Fluttershy did? Twilight asked once the bowing and hugging had been gotten over with. She was all for forgiving and forgetting, but this was a bit much. Because despite everything, Fluttershy's actions have greatly aided the ponies of Equestria, Celestia said calmly. Her intentions were good, and there is very little lasting damage that can't be fixed with a healthy insurance payout. And as I'm sure you've seen, nearly all of Ponyville is better off for the experience. Her one day of innocence gave a lot of ponies a way to heal that they wouldn't have had otherwise. While I would never advise a whole lifetime of it, a single afternoon is just what every pony needed. She then looked at Fluttershy and her daughter, both of whom had taken the headache cure with great relief. Do you believe what happened was right? Fluttershy shrunk back a little. Curl laid a comforting wing on her back. At first I was certain what I was doing was right. Then after I was healed, I was certain it was wrong. Now I'm not really sure. The only beings who have ever had a right to be certain about anything are my parents, Celestia said wryly. An imperfect pony should never believe themselves to be certain about something so monumental as right and wrong. You yourself have seen the results of such naive thinking. It would be more concerning if you had given me a clear-cut answer. Now, you should not see this festival as a reward for foolish and dangerous mistakes that just so happen to end in good results. Though, I am quite happy to see a filly with the power of the gods chose to do something good with it, that still somewhat respected others' choices, and who willingly took on a massive burden for the sake of others, rather than claiming the responsibility of such power to be burden enough. You managed to heal a great many ponies' hearts yesterday. Some may consider your methods somewhat cruel, my sister among them, but as you've learned, my little pony, sometimes the only way we can help others is with the harsher methods. And it takes a lot of courage to do that and be willing to live with the burden, and accept that the burden will always stay with you. If that doesn't prove how kind you are, both of you, I don't know what does. Fluttercurl startled at the princess's attention, but both flutters nodded. No offense here, your majesty, Applejack said, but this whole thing don't quite stir rat. Sure, your pony's happy about this whole thing now, but what about later? And what about all those ponies Fluttershy's magic didn't touch? I don't think they're going to be so quick to forgive and forget, especially if they see Shag getting off scot-free like some sort of Houdini. Celestia laughed. An excellent point, Applejack, and indeed one that should be addressed. Tomorrow you should all expect to see an article from renowned tabloid writer Sunny Day, describing how Fluttershy came to me with a brilliant plan to heal ponies of the lingering emotional damage from discord by letting them relive their foalhoods for a day. Allegedly, I agreed to the plan outwardly, but resented the fact that I hadn't thought of it first, and feared her stealing the limelight from me. So upon giving her the power to enact her plan, I cursed her with the same dark force that had corrupted my dear innocent sister, turning her into a monster until the elements found and saved her. My day guard will, of course, be under orders to seek and destroy such scandalous material, and as I am a pony in a position of authority, many will take any information I want suppressed to be true. My sister's night guard will be under no such orders, allowing the contraband to circulate and increasing the average pony's desire to read it tenfold. The 4 ponies stared at her in silent shock. Violet looked close to tears. Princess, why? There is not a single alicorn alive who has not carried crushing weights upon their shoulders, Princess Celestia said. If Fluttershy is demonized for actions she cannot and will not repeat, the good she could do in the future will be diminished. But for me, a bit of slander is simply par for the course. So you're just gonna laugh at every pony? Applejack asked, scandalized. I shall simply be posting a clearly fictitious story in a rag full of fictitious stories, which are all understood to be fictitious stories. Ponies loathe authority, and yet they cling to it. They can only truly accept a leader who they believe to be equal on some level to themselves. But you're still deceiving them. Can you do that? Tell me, Abigail Jacqueline, have you ever read a tabloid for yourself? Yeah, once. Whole lot of hooey, a lot of them. Precisely. It is a fundamental truth about society that tabloids will always lie. I tried for many years to fight this fact, but the more I pushed, the harder they lied. Applejack, your element of honesty is a wonderful thing, but is a virtue held only by you. Many ponies represent its complete antithesis, good or bad. There are ponies out there who can be counted on only to lie, and to never speak the truth. They cannot be stopped from lying any more than you can be kept from stating the truth. Applejack hesitated. She hadn't thought about it that way. But still, you can't work with apple thieves without helping apple thieves. Aren't you just encouraging more ponies to believe those dang things? How can you let them say such horrible things about you? Twilight finally burst out. How is this any different from Fluttershy taking on every pony's grief? No matter what is printed, there are ponies who want to believe the worst of me, and who will twist any story to fit their worldview. There is nothing I can say that cannot be twisted back on some pony determined to see the worst. If I made a public statement that Fluttershy went mad with grief, was driven by such madness, they could twist that and her public incident at last year's gala to make her appear mentally unstable. If I told the whole truth, complete with Fluttershy giving a public confession of guilt, they could claim that she and the rest of you are aiding me in some grand conspiracy. I cannot change this. All I can do is control the narrative myself, and ensure that the only pony hurt by the lies is one who has endured them for centuries, and will continue to endure them for centuries more. Applejack, Twilight, it's okay. They all turned to look at Fluttershy and Fluttercurl, who had spent all that time whispering furiously to one another. Fluttercurl had a poorly hidden scowl on her face. It's okay. We don't mind. We've talked it over. And Fluttercurl convinced you this is for the better? Violet asked. Curl snorted. It's like the princess said, ponies are going to make up whatever they want about all this no matter what we do. We have enough attention on us as is without adding whatever tabloid bullshit they can come up with. If the princess's plan keeps ponies off Shy's back, I'm all for it. I really do want to face what I've done, Fluttershy whispered. But I'm tired of all this. All these scars Discord left behind. I just want to go back to living my life. The most important ponies already know the truth anyway. If this is what's best for every pony to heal again, I'm okay with it. Applejack sighed. I guess I can't argue with that. If a tree's gonna fall anyway, guess it's best to make sure it falls where it'll do the least damage. She hated the very idea of it, but controlled lie would be better for everyone than letting the truth be twisted into something horrible. Twilight still looked shaken, but she bowed her head to the princess. They will be done. Celestia reached out a wing to lift Twilight's head. Do not fret for me, Twilight Sparkle. I was here before, and I'll be here long after. These falsehoods have existed before today, and they will exist tomorrow. There's something a consequence of being a leader. But you know the truth in your heart, and as long as you are willing to share that truth with those who are willing to listen, the truth will live on. Ponies flirt from whichever lies suits them best, but the truth remains, like I do. Do you understand? Twilight nodded. They embraced like mother and child. Then Celestia turned to Fluttercurl with a bright smile, and magically lifted a pile of papers from the desk. Now that's out of the way, I do believe you have some documentation to fill out. Fluttercurl groaned. Trixie sat in the only bar in Ponyville that still had any drinks left, nursing a glass of gin. Spike, her appointed wool-sitter, was curled up on the stool next to her, sleeping off his belly full of donuts. Lightweight. The owners of the dance club were in tears over so much of their alcohol stock being poured into the dirt, though they had received a hefty enough insurance payout that they figured they'd be up and running again by next week. The reveals of the past few days had left the group reeling even still. The herd had only barely begun to accept Trixie as a friend. Now it turned out she had the same power as Twilight, and Fluttershy had spent the past month harboring the remnants of Discord's curse on her within herself. Now that remnant had her own element of living as Fluttershy's daughter? Hell, even the fact that multiple ponies could wield the same element was revelation enough. Trixie started muttering to the unconscious Spike. It would have been easier if my family was awful to me. Bunch of siblings fighting for attention, parents who nagged at me all the time. But nope. Instead I get a herd of brothers and sisters who loved me even at my worst, a dad who read himself ragged trying to care for us all, and a mom who never gave up on me. How could I blame them for any of that? They even took care of me when I was broken. I still need to thank them for that. She finished her glass and set it on the counter. The sound echoed on either side of her. She snapped her head up to see two unicorns with their coloring on her left, and a brownish earth pony to her right. They all grinned at her. Trixie resigned herself to her fate. Lexi leapt onto the bar on all fours and shouted, "Hug Deckle!" She was buried in blue fur in seconds. Festival music played from a set of Pinky's musical contraptions, which she'd been making a lot more of since regaining her sanity. Rumor has it she'd asked the legendary violinist Octavia Melody for tips on acoustics, but no pony could figure out how they knew each other. Frankly, no pony cared. Today was a day to celebrate. The baked goods truly were good, and Sugar Cube Corner made a killing that day. Even Rainbow Dash, normally one to watch her weight, took the chance to pick out a little. There wasn't a baked fad to be found that day. Pinky and the Cakes had threatened anyone with the word apple in their name with a business end of Pinkie Pie's party cannon, patent pending. As such, there was somewhat of a price war between the Apple Family stand and the Sugar Cube Corner one. The apples had the cheaper prices and more volume, but the cakes had Pinkie Pie. Celestia had managed to use her royal influence to get a couple of Wonderbolts to show up for a charity performance, and Rainbow Dash was even asked to do a controlled Sonic Rain Boom as part of the opening act. It was mostly used as a background effect, admittedly, but even being in a support role to the Wonderbolts had left her near comatose, even if it had been the most unprofessional show they'd put on in the past century. Rarity made massive sales on sparkly hats and scarves that even she'd normally consider too garish to sell, but it seemed the festivities had put the town in something of a glitter and sparkles mood. She even received a special order from Ditsy Doo, of all ponies, who had been needing a pair of dresses for herself and her daughter to receive her award in Canterlot. With all the supplies Rarity was using for the festival, she was going to have to make a trip up there herself pretty soon. Rarity had been somewhat disappointed when Applejack stopped by with the tattered remnants of her old sets and asked that they be remade into a new hat, but at least convinced her to take her fancier gala hat back in the meantime. But really, darling, are you sure you don't want something new? I know you loved that old thing, but it was a gift from my pa, Rarity. It's something of an Apple Family heirloom. Rarity stopped and let the implications sink in. I see. Have you, mentioned this to Fluttershy? And tell her she destroyed one of my family heirlooms? Girl's miserable enough. I might be honesty, but even I know when to keep my trap shut. Rarity huffed out a laugh. Speaking of family, Applejack's eyes narrowed. When are you gonna stop pretending your parents don't exist? Applejack, I'm sure I have no idea what you're talking about. Rarity, half the ponies in town think you and Sweetie Belle are orphans who just wandered into town one day. Twilight was shocked when I told her your parents were alive and well. Well, I can't control what other ponies think. No, but you sure as heck can control what you say and do. Pinkie Pie hasn't seen her folks in years and she uses her last name more than ya. Are you that ashamed of being a Belle? Belle isn't actually my family name, Rarity responded flatly, avoiding Applejack's gaze. They wanted to give me and Sweetie a shared name. I forced them to compromise with Belle. And I'm not ashamed of them. I simply don't want ponies to know about them, is all. Applejack deadpanned. That sounds a whole lot shame to me, darling. You talk about your parents like they're some sort of disease. If I want to become respected and admired among high society, I can't have it known that I come from such garish origins. You have parents, Rarity. That's more than some ponies can say. Rarity flinched. Your laugh is one of the first gifts parents give their kids. You should cherish it. I know it's a little rude of me to bring it up, but if your parents could turn out a generous, hard-working pony like you, they can't be all bad. Rarity had nothing to say to that. The Kingdom Crusaders had taken it upon themselves to put on a comedic stage play, and after drastically misinterpreting the definition of comic violence, wound up throwing together the most shockingly violent action performance Ponyville had ever seen, complete with special effects. Thankfully, this mood killer was relegated to a small corner of the festival, easily ignored by all. Rarity, Applejack, and Rainbow Dash had each managed to sit through it once as a show of support. There was exactly one pony who willingly stayed through the entire thing, and who stayed through each and every repeat performance. After the fillies had taken their bows and let Trixie take the stage, Silver Spoon stood from the spot she had been rooted, and, with no small amount of zammering, asked the girls if they'd like to spend the festival with her. The Crusaders accepted her gladly. Applebloom, being the leader, took it upon herself to break the ice while they took a cold soda break. Hey Silver Spoon, I was wondering, I've got a cousin in Appaloosa who works with the sheriff Silverstar. Is he a relative of yours? Silver Spoon looked down. I don't know. I don't really know any family outside of Ponyville. I've never asked my parents about them or anything. Surprised by the answer, Skiddaloo chugged the last of her root beer and tried a different avenue. Wow, this hits the spot. No pony ever said how much running around you have to do to put on a play. I bet you get these kinds of drinks all the time, though, right, Silver? Nope. My mom always said soda rots my teeth, and I shouldn't drink it unless I want to get ugly teeth, Silver Spoon said sheepishly. The Kingdom Crusaders exchanged looks. Sweetbelle, remembering what Rarity had told her, downed the rest of her drink and took Silver Spoon by the hose. Come on, let's go. Silver Spoon startled. What? Go where? To climb Dr. Who's mountain of ice cream. Meanwhile, Madame Silver Platter frantically looked around for her child, clinging to her signature parasol to protect her mask of makeup from the carnival of food all around her. Where had her baby run off to now? She hoped she wasn't trying to stuff herself on sweets. However, was Silver Spoon supposed to find and marry a rich husband as she let her appearance go? She wasn't even sure she understood the point of this festival her daughter had begged her to attend. She and her husband had spent the day in Canterlot when that fog had been about. Silvertongue, recently changed from Silver Axe, reluctantly trailed behind his wife, wondering if his presence wouldn't scare off his daughter even more. It wasn't pleasant, realizing the longest time you had spent with your own child in the past few years was time spent madly chasing her down to add to your grandfather's trophy wall. Silvertongue had melted down each of his old namesakes and shown his daughter the spoons he reforged them into as an apology, and still she shuddered at his touch and cowered at the sight of him. He knew he shouldn't give up, but he couldn't help feeling lost. Silver Platter thought of a place she hadn't looked yet, and with one more withering glance at the stage where some low-class fillies were performing mindless dribble, she began to trot back towards the central square, only to run into her daughter's teacher. Miss Turley immediately blocked her path, and, in a tone just a hint too eager, struck up a wonderful conversation about the history of great Earth Pony artists who didn't need fancy horns or extra limbs to create beautiful works of art. Silvertongue joined in eagerly, and their sense of time was so thoroughly lost that neither noticed the quartet of fillies sneaking right by them, or the wink their teachers shot them. The one and only Trixie was, frankly, glad not to be booed or left off stage before getting to start her show. The lack of rotten fruit being flung her way was a nice change of pace from her last dozen times of forming. The great and powerful Trixie's death spiral had begun here. Perhaps it was fitting that the one and only Trixie began her ascent in the same place, donned in a midnight vest courtesy of Rarity and backed by a whole sisterhood of stage artists. The show Trixie managed to put on with their combined efforts was enough to blow any recollection of the disaster with the Ursa Minor out of the town's collective minds. Sure, some of them distantly recalled a drama queen and a liar with her same name and coloration, but they'd seen about 5 different ponies with that coloration in the past few days, so their suspension of disbelief was already strong enough. The infamous Canterlot tabloid writer Sunny Day sat next to Twilight Sparkle throughout the show. Applejack, Rarity, and Rainbow Dash on her other side after much begging and pleading on Twilight's part. Fluttershy was still being coaxed out of her cottage by her daughter and Zecora, and Pinkie was essentially single-handedly riding the town's supply of confectionaries at the cake's booth. Rarity watched the greatly redacted retelling of their adventure with her usual critical eye. But her wardrobe is much better this time, and she's at least stopped stooping to humiliating her own audience, but she still acts so infuriatingly arrogant. Well, duh, that's show business, said a younger-sounding version of Trixie's voice from her left. You gotta sparkle your own horn if you want to eat. Rarity turned her head and startled. Trixie? Nah, I'm Lexi, grinned the teenage mare with a stage mask on her flanks. I'm Trixie's sister. It's wonderful she finally accepted our help, said Trixie's voice in a mature tone. Rainbow Dash turned her head to the right and did a double-take between the stage and the mare with a pan flute kitty mark next to her. Did Trixie learn to clone herself? That stopped being funny when we were 8, except when we say it, intoned a flattered version of Trixie's voice. Applejack glanced behind her and I saw Trixie with her mane in a bun and a moonlit silhouette on her flank. Suddenly, Trixie's need to be center of attention was making a lot more sense. A quiet, gentler version of Trixie's voice sounded right behind Twilight. She looks so happy, doesn't she? Nixie? You really did save her. In more ways than one. Thank you. Twilight stayed glued to Sunny Day's side throughout the entire festivities, delighted just to spend time with her. Of course, her attention was split somewhat with making sure everything ran smoothly. Organization was her way of having fun. Sue her. Fluttershy showed up eventually in her simple yet elegant gown, flanked by her loyal foot zebra and the little bat pony in knight's garb, glaring at anyone who looked at them funny. Celestia had mentioned that being a bat pony made Fluttercurl technically a member of Luna's night guard, with the assigned task of acting as bodyguard to Princess Gaia while she recovered from her nightmare vacation. The filly wasn't sure how she felt about being part of the princess's guard, but was more than happy to put on a cool set of armor for the occasion anyway. Fluttershy insisted that Zecora didn't need to accompany them, but Zecora admitted that she'd wanted to spend the day with her anyway. If nothing else, it was a good excuse to involve herself more with the community. Both Zebra and Bat Pony noticed how nervous Fluttershy still was over all the extra friendly attention. Zecora nuzzled her gently. Do not feel faint. You'll find being a star is different from a saint. Of course, even among all the confetti, music, sugary food, and general good cheer, there was one dark shadow over Fluttershy's head. She would be expected to address her subjects, on stage, watched by everyone. But her daughter promised she would be right up on stage with her, and pointed out with a wry grin that half the attention would be on the strange Bat Pony anyway. By late afternoon, Fluttershy's fear had wound down from mind-numbing panic to a mere sickening dread. She'd barely done more than sipped on water all day, not sure if she'd be able to keep anything down. Sunity approached her at some point and asked her if she was sure she wanted to go through with it. Fluttershy gulped and said, No, I don't. But they all care about me. I need to let them know I'm alright. Finally, the hour arrived, and Fluttershy and her daughter ascended the staircase of the stage as though they were marching to the gallows. All too soon, she reached the top and stared out at the crowd, while her bodyguard took her place behind her. She saw her friends, smiling encouragingly at her from the front row. The foals she had stared, expressions unreadable. Silverspoon, watching her with an expression of longing. There was Cheerilee and Zecora, looking at her adoringly, and every other pony in Ponyville she'd charmed into foals, who had been granted a day without fear or worry. She felt nervousness, guilt, happiness, and a dozen other emotions all at once, blurring into a whirlwind of uncertainty. Did she deserve this? Should her friends have just banished her to the moon? How much good had she really done? She opened her mouth to speak, and only the barest whimper came out, too low for anyone to hear. There were a few hoofsteps behind her, then a leathery wing arrested against her back. She turned to see her daughter right next to her, looking at her encouragingly. It's okay, Shy. I'm right here. You don't need to be afraid anymore, she whispered. Fluttershy breathed in deep. Inhale, exhale. Hello, every pony. I'd just like to say, it's nice to know that all of you care about me so much, and that all of you want me to be happy, like I wanted you all to be happy. It's nice to know that you all know what I did was for all of you, not just for myself. And I know that doesn't make it right, but I'm glad I was able to help you all in some way. I didn't do everything right. I did some bad things I may never stop regretting. A lot of ponies won't ever forgive me for those things, and maybe they're right to. I'm sorry for that. But everything I did was to help ponies, and I did, even if it wasn't the way I intended to. If any of you are willing to take me back after all I did, I'll accept that. And if you won't, I'll accept that too. I'm not going to make excuses for myself. A rock flew from the crowd and struck Fluttershy above one eye. A thin trickle of blood flowed from her temple. Her bodyguard snarled at the crowd, searching for the perpetrator to no avail. Fluttershy just took another breath and kept going. I only wish I understood things as well when I started as I do now. I've learned lots of lessons, some harder than others, but I wouldn't want to forget those lessons, because knowing and understanding, making mistakes and learning from them, is part of growing up. You don't get a pearl without a few grains of sand along the way. I understand that now. She turned to the filly next to her, smiling. And it's all thanks to you, dear. Every pony, I'd like you all to meet my daughter, Odine. Fluttercurl, no, Odine, just as she had signed on her new birth certificate, blinked in surprise at the sudden pivot. She saved me from myself by reminding me what it means to be kind, even when she didn't quite understand it herself. I wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for her. I know it's all a little confusing, even for me, but she's here to stay, and I couldn't be prouder. Odine blinked away the sting in her eyes and rushed to hug her mother. The crowd around them cheered. A feeling swelled in their hearts, not unlike using the elements. Still holding each other, Fluttershy and Odine began to sing. Once upon a time, you came into my world and made the stars align. Now I can see the signs. You'll pick me up when I get down so we can shine. Shine like rainbows. Shine like rainbows. Shy, you were in my life, and I can count on you to be there by my side. And when the flowers come alive, we sing our songs to lift us up so we can shine. And the sound that we hear in our hearts makes a crescendo. And the pearl that ignites in the dark, it makes us all glow. Fluttershy and Odine looked out of the crowd and beckoned to their friends. It didn't take much encouraging for them to take the stage themselves, joining the chorus, as they and all the town sang together. Together we stand, as the rain begins to fall, and holding our heads up high, as the sun shines through it all. And the sound that we hear in our hearts makes a crescendo. And the pearl that ignites in the dark, it makes us all glow. And shine like rainbows. We shine like rainbows. Shine like rainbows. We shine like rainbows. Shine like rainbows. And every pony cheered, from cheerleading our students to Sakura, to Rarity, Twilight, Trixie, and all the unicorns. From Rumodash and Ditsudu and all the Pexai, to Pinky Diane and Applejack and all the Earth ponies. Little Pipsqueak stomped his hooves while the Black Nightingale on his back trolled along. Angel Bunny climbed on Sakura's head to clap his approval. The Crusaders and Silver Spoon hugged one another and sniffled at the song. If one looked closely, they might even see a golden-eyed ghost smiling along. Cheerily called out, 3 cheers for Princess Gaia! 3 cheers for Princess Fluttershy! 3 cheers for the mother to us all! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Glad that's over, Fluttershy mumbled just loud enough for Odine to hear. Odine just laughed. Oh, Fluttershy, you gotta know this is just the beginning. Dear Princess Celestia, as ponies, our doubts and fears can bind us. But more than that, we can bind ourselves. We bind ourselves by not accepting when beautiful things come to an end. We bind ourselves by worrying that our imperfections make us unworthy of love. We bind ourselves by not accepting what we can't change and ignoring what we can. We bind ourselves by not wanting to accept the parts of us that scare us the most. We bind ourselves by forgetting that not all problems have clear right or wrong answers. We bind ourselves by refusing the love of others for fear of losing ourselves trying to fit in. We bind ourselves by not accepting that something wonderful can also be painful. We bind ourselves by thinking that because we aren't known to many, that makes us unworthy of living. But our friends are there for those times, to help us appreciate the beautiful things while they're there, to show us that we can be loved despite our flaws, to help us see what we can change and accept what we can't, to show us that those ugly parts of ourselves are just as important as the rest, to help us make the hard choices even when it's easier not to choose at all, to give us the courage to become part of something greater than yourself, to help us accept the pain and the wonder together, to show us that every pony, no matter how invisible, is worth something. And by covering each other's weaknesses and encouraging each other's virtues, ponies who help and support one another are 1,000 times greater than the sum of their individual strengths, and together, they can find their freedom. Your faithful students, Twilight Sparkle, Rarity Belle, Abigail Jacqueline V, Pinky Diane Pie, Rainbow Dash, the one and only Trixie, Fluttershy, and Odine. The end.